Lisa Eldridge, and I'm a professional makeup artist. Over my career, I must have made up thousands of faces, from catwalk models to magazine covers and celebrities on the red carpet. Makeup can be seen as a frivolous subject, but I think it's hugely important. What we believe to be beautiful is a window on the world we're living in. As a makeup artist working in the fashion industry, my goal is always to create something which is modern, ideally to create future trends. But to do that, I'm constantly looking back in time. I've been collecting vintage makeup for the last 30 years, and I'm fascinated by what it can tell us.
I love the aesthetic of that, isn't
it
modern?
Isn't it gorgeous? And the name, Odour, oh no, because who wants to be stinky?
In this series, I'm looking at some iconic eras in our history, each with radically different perceptions of beauty.
Everyone wanted to be cafe au lait, like Josephine Baker.
Yeah.
And I want to find out what these looks say about the age.
Here we have Georgina's hair.
God, it's such a good colour.
I'll be researching original techniques and trying them on our model, Queenie.
It's so easy to blend. They were onto something.
Scouring through recipe books, I'll make products that haven't seen the light of day for hundreds of years.
It's just so incredibly natural. Almost looks like you're blushing from within.
And for the more dangerous formulas, I'll be getting some professional help.
Not too bad. Trust me.
Okay.
This was a fashionable shape.
What someone puts on their face and why says as much about an era as art, architecture, or food. If you think beauty is only skin deep, think again. The biggest revolution in makeup happened in the Roaring '20s, when we cast off the puritanical reserve of the Victorians and the era of modern makeup was born.
If ever a look evokes a period, it's these gorgeous girls. Mannequin heads from the 20s and 30s, and each one a slightly different character. First, we have our silent movie star vamp. She's faded a little bit now, but you can see she would have had those dark, midnight blue, sooty eyes and a minuscule mouth. Then we have our sporty girl. She's got her liquid blush on, she's vibrant, she's healthy looking. And finally, our 1930s glamour puss. She's wearing liquid bronze and a full set of fake eyelashes.
And they're all wearing very obvious makeup.
And looking strikingly modern.
The interwar years were a period of seismic change. After the horrors of the First World War, there was a generation of young people determined to enjoy themselves and their freedom. This was the birth of modern Britain, and the ultimate symbol of modernity was the 1920s beauty. To recreate the look, I'm going to need the help of our model, Queenie.
Hi, Lisa.
Hi, Queenie, how are you?
I'm good, thanks.
In the 1920s and 30s, women finally had a choice when it came to beauty looks. Not as much choice as we have today, obviously, but radical compared to what had come before.
So, Queenie, you've grown up watching tutorials, makeup tutorials on YouTube. You've seen every look. You can probably do every look at this stage. I'm sure you can. What would you still consider a shocking makeup look?
I think very like neon, but also using makeup not just to look pretty, but for an effect.
So it's not about glamming up or looking pretty. It's about making a statement and really rebelling.
To help understand how rebellious the 20s look was, I'm going to show you a modern-day example of an edgy makeup look.
I'm going to subvert a little bit colour and texture, so it's definitely going to make quite a statement.
In the 1920s, the look was all about the shock of the new. Startling splashes of colour in contrast to the demure look of the previous century. It all reflected a Britain hurtling towards the modern age. start of the 1920s, it was still seen as daring to wear coloured cosmetics, and there weren't that many places to buy them. But if you wanted to be bold and had enough money, you could come to Selfridges, one of the few places to openly sell cosmetics.
Selfridges was light years ahead of everyone else when it came to helping to make makeup more acceptable. Probably because of Mr. Selfridge's love of everything modern. They had the first ever makeup counter. Initially, it was right at the back of the store, but we can see from this map that by the end of the 20s, cosmetics were right up front and centre.
Mr. Selfridge was also associated with two celebrities of the day, known as the Dolly sisters. Jenny and Rosie were twins, originally from Hungary. They became the darlings of fashionable London and caught Harry Selfridge's eye. Vintage makeup collector, artist and friend Madeline Marsh is an expert on these 1920s icons.
So where do you think they're getting their inspiration for this look?
Well, they are absolutely the pioneer of the it girl look. Aldous Huxley, who was the writer of that period, said everybody had to have that serpentine slimness. Everybody had to look like Art Deco buildings, you know, shiny, dark, modern. And they led the way. All the objects here are all the things you needed to do to your body and face to make sure you could party suitably glamorously. What are you going to do? You cut off your hair. So here we are, we've got the shingling clipper. How revolutionary was that in the 20s? Because hair had always been a woman's crowning glory.
Cascading.
Now you were getting rid of it, and just like the dollies, look at those fabulous little flicky curls. And here there's a 1920s flapper curler. This is what you'd have come to Selfridges to buy, the store that embraced the modern age.
So futuristic for that time.
Really futuristic. So we've got short hair. Now, we've made our skirt short. Oh, no, hairy legs. What are we going to do? Suddenly, you see advertised everywhere, teeny, little shavers. I mean, look at the size.
This is crazy. I mean, maybe for a bit of a junior, but how on earth would you shave your legs with this? It would take a week.
But perfectly discreet, so you could hide it away in your tiny little handbag and nobody'd know.
And then for armpits as well?
Armpits, and once you've shaved those, deodorising. Because with all that Charlestoning, suddenly ladies were sweating or perspiring. And you get ads for new deodorants.
That's stunning. I love the aesthetic of that.
Isn't it
modern?
Gorgeous? And the name, Odour, oh no, because who wants to be stinky? And it was promised that if you put that on, it would ensure your personal daintiness. And we all want to be dainty, don't we?
So interesting that you're talking about being dainty and women being sold this idea of daintiness, but at the same time, women are doing quite the opposite. So there's nothing dainty about going out all night, smoking cigarettes, going dancing, wearing short skirts, but then you've got all of these products and a lot of the messaging probably coming from men saying to be dainty. So there is some kind of mixed messages there as well.
Total mixed message. And the 20s was the big period of negative advertising. Yeah, are you smelly? Are you wrinkly? Are you hairy? You need to buy this. But equally, it's the price of freedom, isn't it? And if there's one thing that really sums up the freedom of the period, for me, it's this little Art Deco compact. It was inspired by the shape of a camera. So, which was the pocket camera, that was another invention of the period. You know, you open that side, that's where your powder was, pull out the little film winder, and there's your lippy. And then when you open up the back, there's your gaspers. And that tells you so much about freedom. Their mothers weren't allowed to put lipstick on, they weren't allowed to smoke in public.
This is really shocking, being out in public with your mirror, admiring yourself.
It was shocking, but hey, we'd had a world war, we'd had a pandemic, sounds familiar. People were desperate for fun, they were desperate for a play, they wanted music, dancing, alcohol, and masses of makeup.
These newfound freedoms shocked the more traditional elements of society. In February 1920, one newspaper remarked, "The social butterfly type has probably never been so prevalent as at present. It comprises the frivolous, scantily clad, jazzing flapper, irresponsible and undisciplined." But whatever the newspaper thought, change was inevitable. Around 800,000 men died during the war, and young women were entering the workforce in huge numbers. In 1918, women also won the right to vote. Newly empowered young women were expressing themselves in bolder ways, and there was one daring beauty statement any woman could make.
Women were cutting their hair as an act of power and rebellion. This was the birth of the bob, and soon there were a dizzying array of styles to choose from, like the Eton crop, which is my personal favourite, the shingle, and the Marcel wave, named after the hot irons that were used to create the look.
Hairdressers often refused to shear off women's long locks, so they turned to barber shops, or did it themselves. A woman cutting her hair was seen as so scandalous that some schools banned bobs. Clergy sermonised against it, and some women were even fired for coming to work with bobbed hair.
So, Queenie, as beautiful as your hair is, no self-respecting flapper would have hair this long.
Oh, no.
Luckily for you, I have these 1920s very authentic hair clippers.
You're going to make me look like her.
Yes, we are. Look at her, she's clipping her own hair at the back, particularly because they're so small.
It would take so long.
It would take forever. Look at them. But don't worry, I'm going to do it in layers. So I'm going to start underneath and I'll just go around like that. What do you think? Yeah?
No.
No, I don't blame you. I'm really bad at hair anyway, so I'm not going to put you through that, don't worry. But what I would like you to do is just tie your hair back,
okay,
just so I can do the makeup. Just get it all off your face. Lovely.
To help me work out what I want to use on Queenie, I'm going to have to delve into my own vintage makeup stash.
Some of my favourite things in my vintage collection are not the fancy, expensive and rare things. Quite the contrary, they're the everyday, ordinary things. And the reason I like them so much is because I definitely feel a connection with women's lives. It was such an exciting time to be a young woman and going out and dressing up, and the makeup really reflects that. Just the level of convenience was something that was absolutely game-changing and right on target for the young modern woman. This is one of the first eyeshadows. This was a Maybelline one. They made 2 shades only, blue and green. And I remember when I first acquired this, expecting it to be like a midnight blue, like a dark blue. And when I opened it, so surprised. It's so bright. It really looks like a modern-day pigment. And this would have been, again, something that was just so revolutionary. Not only to see this colour, to be able to apply it, it would last, it was easy to put on, and you could sling it in your handbag.
As much as I would love to try out vintage products on Queenie, they aren't safe to use. So I'm going to be creating my own versions. I'm getting help from pharmacist Su Shen Wang, who is following recipes written at the time to ensure the formulas are as authentic as possible.
The big innovation of this era has to be the arrival of foundation as we know it today. It's surprising to think that it's only been around for 100 years. But up until that point, foundation was just one of 2 things. It was either some form of powder stuck to moisturiser, or it was a lead or toxic-based paint or paste. Look what's on the market today. It's astounding. There are hundreds of different shades and so many different formulas, from creams, powders, cushions, tints, liquids, you name it, it exists. And for the cosmetic companies, nailing the next big formula is the holy grail, because there's a fortune to be made.
At the start of the 1920s, foundation didn't exist yet. It would take the demands of a newly emerging industry to kickstart this revolution in makeup. The cinema. it's hard to overemphasise the importance of the silver screen on both the beauty look itself and the makeup industry during the interwar years.
The weekly trip to the cinema really sold dreams and imaginings. And who wouldn't want to be a movie star? This quote by George Orwell really sums it up for me. You may have 3 halfpence in your pocket and not a prospect in the world, but in your new clothes, and I would add makeup to that, you can stand on a street corner indulging in a private daydream of yourself as Clark Gable or Greta Garbo, which compensates you for a great deal.
In 1920s Britain, 20 million people, that's half the population at the time, by the way, flocked to the movies every week. In picture houses up and down the country, beauty icons were projected onto screens on a scale never experienced before. Bryony Dixon is curator of early cinema at the British Film Institute. In this refrigerated vault, they hold hundreds of thousands of cans of precious old film.
So, Bryony, how important was going to the movies culturally during the interwar years?
Incredibly important. It was the biggest mass entertainment of the day, and the cinemas themselves had really only been opening around 1910, 1911. So it's very different for people to be going away from their home to sit in these sort of rather comfortable surroundings and seeing really high-quality pictures.
And seeing faces, I guess, that big on screen, close-ups and things like that, must have been extraordinary.
Yes.
Moving, you know, animated,
Yes.
fashionable faces.
People were so obsessed with these stars. And this is where the Americans begin to win out, because they seek out these people who have what they call the film face.
I'm so interested in the film face. I love this idea.
Yeah.
So young hopefuls from all over America were jumping on trains to get to Hollywood for their screen tests. What was happening here were young women coming to London.
They were going to Cricklewood.
Doesn't sound very
Doesn't sound
glamorous.
quite as glamorous. In fact, we have a film of that very studio here, where you can see
on for this.
girls would arrive responding to advertisements or competitions to spot the next film star.
2 classes of tests have to be passed. The first is the camera test to try and find that elusive factor, the film face. The second is the acting test. So interesting that acting is very secondary. Okay.
Acting you can learn,
Okay.
but the film face is
You've
the
got it or you
first.
haven't.
You've got it or you haven't, absolutely. Here they arrive in pairs.
Coming in 2. Oh, wow.
Yeah. And they're probably learning from the movies what they should look like, what kind of makeup
Yeah.
they should be wearing.
Oh, they look so shy and uncomfortable. And did any of these girls make it?
They did indeed. We
Great.
have the winner, Sybil Rhoda. And here she's doing her close-up.
The lighting's incredible. It's like there's a luminous glow all around her. And the tiny lips and the sad eyebrows. I can see why they chose her.
Every actor in the early 1920s really did have to be ready for their close-up. While early film actors could get away with wearing crude stage makeup, advances in film quality and lighting meant that the old makeup was no longer fit for purpose. But for some, this problem was an opportunity. Enter Maximilian Faktorowicz, a Jewish-Polish immigrant. In 1904, on his arrival into the USA, he changed his name to Max Factor and set about revolutionising the movie makeup market.
Max Factor, working with the Hollywood makeup departments, noticed that traditional theatrical grease paint really wasn't working for the close-ups. It would look heavy and sometimes crack on camera. He then invented this, which is flexible grease paint. This was a great innovation at the time. It was easier to apply and it looked very natural. He also noticed that regular women wanted the look and they wanted this product. He then rebranded it as society makeup. Notice the word society, making it respectable. This led on to further developments, culminating in the beautiful pancake makeup. It was a smash hit with the general public. It was easy to use, it didn't crack, it was quick, it looked natural, and you could get that flawless Hollywood look. Every woman all around the world loved it.
Pancake foundation went from being a pro tool of the trade for the industry to a must-have everyday item for millions of women. It had been years in development, and the formula was a heavily guarded secret. We've been trawling through books and articles trying to find a similar recipe, and Sue's had a go at recreating this early foundation.
So, Sue, you've had a go at making the Max Factor original pancake.
Yes.
How did you get on, and what did you
Horribly.
use? Oh, no. Oh, dear. What happened?
Okay, so we had a very, very generic recipe, which pretty much told us to use some oils, some waxes, a plasticizing agent, some dispersing agents, and to use talc as a base. So we pretty much just had a go, but this is what we have at the moment.
OK, can I have a look?
Go ahead.
Well, the instructions with this was to apply it with a wet sponge and to thin it out over the skin. Oh, it's piling. Uh-oh. Yikes. I'm afraid that's been a fail, so sorry.
Yeah, that's a definite fail.
It really is an art.
A fine art.
The search for the new cutting-edge foundation formula still goes on today. It's difficult to keep innovating, and with such a huge amount of potential profit in it, it's no wonder Max Factor kept his secret under wraps.
Now, unfortunately, what we created with Sue in the lab was a fail. I am going to use a modern equivalent, and I think something like this will give us a very similar effect. We cannot underestimate what a revelation this must have been for women, to have something that was so easy to apply that you could do on the go. It was portable, it was long-lasting, which just gave you that instantly flawless look.
It must have felt so empowered just to get rid of the spots and just have completely clear skin.
Just
Yeah,
whip it out of your
gone.
handbag, dab on, and it was gone. And you could really get that beautifully seamless look that obviously women were seeing the Hollywood stars wearing. It would have been such a wonderful, incredible moment.
Foundation wasn't the only product that made its way into the mainstream. Fueled by glamorous images of Hollywood stars, the cosmetics industry exploded. Just like now, women were fascinated by the beauty secrets of their favourite celebrities. Today, it all unfolds across a myriad of print and social media, but in the 20s and 30s, it came in the shape of movie fan magazines. Claire Smith, curator of special collections at the BFI, has studied them cover to cover.
Cinema itself was part of this much wider visual culture. It was about giddying visual excess in so many ways. Print culture exploded in exactly the same moment, and fan magazines grew up with cinema. They were marketed to be very economical. You know, they weren't a lot of money
How much was it to buy one?
In this period we're talking about, probably just a couple of pence to acquire one. And people could buy into cinema. It was all about a lifestyle, you know. They were talking about beauty and ideas of beauty. They were talking about fashion. They were talking about celebrities' lives, you know, and what actresses were doing on and off the screen. They were very heavily targeted at women, not just read by women, but they were targeted at women. So a lot of this was about women talking to women about things that they felt mattered in that particular moment. So it really is about a lifestyle that you could buy into. So this is from 1926, where they're talking about the cult of charm. You know, every woman in particular has charm. You know, it's a kind of birthright. You're born with charm. You're born with natural gifts. But, you know, you can then enhance them. You can preserve them. And then, of course, right alongside it, you have got your very strong advertisements for Yardley's Freesia face powder.
I love that the ads on this page are for face powder and cigarettes. Totally sums up the decade.
That's the 20s right there on a page, you know, so nothing is accidental. You know, all of this is working together.
We had a great how-to on the lip. Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
So here we have what looks like a lovely editorial piece, an advice column almost, on Are Your Lips Shaped for Kisses? Are they too thin, too thick, too long or too short? But it's actually a very overt ad for face powder. It is an ad, it's an advertisement.
It's advertising, you know, that we wouldn't be allowed to do today,
No
but
way.
of course.
It finished with important in capitals. The celebrated beauty products mentioned above can all be obtained and blah, blah, blah. But I guess it's two symbiotic industries, so why not? I mean, they're both growing up together, they're helping each other.
Yeah.
The glamorous looks are helping to sell the actresses and their lives, which in turn brings people into the cinemas and the box office.
Absolutely. Everybody knew it was a good relationship, so let's keep building on this.
Week after week, the movie industry provided close-ups of beautiful people with new looks to admire and copy. One of the biggest stars of this era was Theda Bara, whose sultry eye makeup inspired one of the most enduring fashion looks. It's a look I'm still in love with today, the smoky eye. But just how easy was it for women to do this with the eye products available back then? Sue has made 3 essential eye products based on the early formulas and my vintage products: eyeshadow, mascara and brow pencil. And I want to try them out on myself before I try them on Queenie.
Modern formulations are so easy to apply, so I'm really curious to try Sue's concoction. And this is based on a 1919 recipe, and it should be as close to this one as possible. This is my Maybelline. Here we go. I can see straight away the colour looks different. It looks a little brighter, but that may just be because time has darkened the other one. Definitely doesn't feel as greasy as I thought. Oh, wow. Oh, this is amazing. I think the heat of your finger is supposed to help you to melt this into the skin. So I'm going to have to work it a little bit. God, we have it so good now with cosmetics. And you think how easy cream eyeshadows are to blend. Now that the eyeshadow is starting to melt almost into the skin, it's starting to look really authentic. It's getting that slightly greasy, shiny, creasy look that you often see in old movies. Now I'm tempted to use Sue's mascara. So I've wet the brush. Okay. Oh, it's good. Very defining and separating. More water. Oh, it takes a lot of work, though. See, we don't know we're born these days. Yeah, it's like a workout. Okay. Next layer. This mascara is phenomenal. I'm not going back to usual modern stuff now. This is so good. Seriously. Next, I'm going to try Sue's eyebrow pencil recreation. This is really not an easy brow pencil to use. The payoff is not very good, and it's very waxy. When I'm looking at old photos, and sometimes the starlet's eyebrows seem so overdrawn and so messy, I can totally see why that would be. The technology wasn't there.
Time to put them to the real test and see if I can do an authentic 20s movie eye on Queenie.
So for the eye makeup, I'd really like to be true to the period and use our authentic recreation. So we've got eyeshadow, a pencil, and we've got our mascara. I think I really want to do that Theda Bara look on you, the vamp, the really sooty, smoky eye. So I'm actually going to use the eye pencil. I'm going to use a little bit of water and just blend together. Oh, that's a great payoff. I'm going to use another brush just to blend that in. I'm going to build up slowly. Probably wasn't as dark, but the film made it appear to be extremely contrasty, so it would have looked a lot darker on film than it probably was in real life. So for mascara, we're using the real deal. This is the soap pigment, and this is exactly what women at this time would have used. I'm going to use water, but people would have just spit onto the brush or probably directly into the mascara. That was considered totally normal and completely fine. Down for me. So I'm just going to brush through from the roots of the lashes right through to the ends. And it looks really effective. Look at that.
Yeah.
With the foundation and eyes done, the next step for Queenie's makeover is to add a bit of colour. And in the 1920s, a novel new product was introduced, which today is a makeup must-have. Its roots can be traced back to an influential fashion designer and her unintentional suntan.
I'm really jealous of Claudette here. I've decided to call her that. She has the most wonderful bronzed cheek and lower eye, and I've been scouring through the recipe books looking for how I can achieve this, and there are lots of recipes for artificial sunburn. This in itself is so extraordinary after centuries of trying to hide sunburn and hide suntan with white powder. Suddenly, women are trying to recreate the look. And this was all because of Coco Chanel, who went to the south of France on a cruise to Cannes in 1923 and accidentally got burnt, inadvertently starting a global trend for suntan. So I'm going to start with a teaspoon of beeswax and a good glug of olive oil. Now, if you didn't already have a sunburn and you wore this out in the sun with all of this olive oil, you definitely would by the end of the day.
I'm going to melt the beeswax, then use a teaspoon each of red and brown ochre, which are natural colour pigments derived from clay. Mixing this with the melted beeswax should create a beautiful, rich colour that I can blend into the skin.
Give this a really good mix. It smells delicious when I eat it. I think that's ready. It's still quite hot, but I just want to see the colour. Ooh. Very nice, quite pinky, but a good colour. Spreads beautifully. Just going to compare this to Claudette. I think that's a really good match. It's got that really rosy tan look, which is very flattering. If you were as pale as Claudette here, you'd have to use it quite sparingly. But what I really like about it is the finish. Because of the oil and the wax, it's just got that really beautiful, luminising sheen to it. So if you're wearing it quite high on your cheeks, it would catch the light beautifully and really emphasise your bone structure and give you that healthy-looking glow.
For the first time, the sun-kissed tones of tanned skin were desirable. Ideas of what was considered beautiful were beginning to shift. Dancer and actor Josephine Baker rose from a humble background in St. Louis to become a global superstar and beauty icon. Magazine editors of the time devoted many column inches to advising their readers on how to get Josephine Baker's look. Cultural historian Dr. Michelle Cressfield has studied the impact of this enduring icon.
I've lost count of the amount of shoots, fashion shoots that I've been on, where Josephine Baker is right slap in the middle of the mood board. I mean, the fact that she's still that powerful today, one can only imagine how powerful those first images of her must have been.
That's absolutely right. Thinking about like what she would have meant for at the time in the 1920s, but since then for African-American women who are really trying to reckon with what is beautiful and looking at a beauty landscape in which they're not represented. And so looking at someone like her who's not just kind of ascending to the type of a kind of like Black culture, but a global culture where she becomes something, a kind of beauty icon for all, that has maintained such important power for African Americans in the ways in which they conceive of their own beauty.
Can you tell us a little bit about Josephine's background and her rise to global superstardom?
She comes to Paris at age 19 for Le Revue, which is supposed to showcase Black art, particularly African-American culture. And what's interesting about the French is that this kind of affinity for African culture was really inspired by the kind of colonial tradition. So thinking about bare-breasted women, the kind of physical form, dark bodies, rhythmic dance, really inspired by primitive or savage images. And in one performance in the 1930s, the press even says she's too light. At the same time, in the U.S. context, she was deemed too dark. And so there's a way in which even the things in which she celebrated and which she kind of capitalized on were oftentimes could be used against her.
So thinking about the commodification of her, how much objectification is going on here?
I would argue that she's very much, she has a role in that in terms of taking agency and has ownership in thinking about the marketing of her image.
One of my most prized possessions, I think, and I think the coolest makeup collab of all time is this, which is the Josephine Baker and Flambert, which were a French jewellery company. And this was to celebrate the movie Zuzu. You could go and buy this bracelet, which would contain your face powder, and go out in public and just touch up your makeup very brazenly and very confidently with everybody looking at you, and put on your red lipstick. Feels like such a strong statement. And I know that this wasn't her only collab.
Yes, that's absolutely right. So her most famous one, of course, is Baker Fix, which was what was described as a brilliance, which was to add kind of luster and shine to the hair. So one of the kind of iconic aspects of Josephine Baker's hairstyle was a hairstyle that was almost painted on.
The mirror-like shine,
yes,
isn't it?
It was high brilliance.
Yeah.
And so the Baker Fix was extremely popular, as was her tanning oil called Baker Oil. She, has often spoke of the French preoccupation with sun tanning at this time. And she, once gave her interview where she said everyone wanted to be cafe au lait, like Josephine Baker. Yeah. So that becomes really, really popular. Toothpaste, if you read kind of descriptions of her physical presence, they often described her big, beautiful eyes, but also her very white teeth, like as kind of juxtaposed against her dark skin. And so she featured in several commercials for toothpaste, kind of really selling this kind of beauty image.
Josephine Baker's success as a black woman was exceptional, and her lucrative collaborations with cosmetic companies pioneering. But it would still be decades before non-white faces regularly made it into the mainstream beauty industry. The industry was certainly expanding, but the key to that expansion would have to be more choice.
So we've gone from having 2 or 3 shades of rouge and lipstick to endless choice. And you're also seeing the beginning of sampling. So something like this, which is a rouge sample, and you actually buy the mini puff. It's very cheap, and you can try out the colours. This one is an extraordinary, almost salmon pink colour. And it says that the puff will be sufficiently impregnated with the colour so that you can experience its marvellous colour effects. So you're able to try before you buy, which is a really new concept.
Samples may have been new, but rouge has been around for millennia. Early formulations were made with natural dyes, but the 20th century saw the introduction of synthetic reds, which provided new explosions of colour. This 1934 book, Pharmaceutical Formulas, has pages of recipes for rouge. Sue's been hard at work preparing some choices for me.
I'd love to try some of these mixtures that you've made. So you've followed the book, and we've got 5 different colours and 1 base.
That's right. This is a carmine basis, so that is a pigment.
Yep.
And then we will blend this with the white basis, which is made from equal portions of kaolin and talc, and then we added just a tiny amount of titanium dioxide in, which is a white pigment.
The pigment, yeah. There's a really silly idea. There's lots of silly ideas about makeup around this time, but this one is about putting a really hot flannel on your cheeks, removing it, and then the colour that your cheeks have gone, that's the shade that you need to match your blush to. So, in with the mirror. So, talk amongst yourselves. Doesn't say how long for. What are you having for dinner tonight?
No idea, I haven't decided yet.
There we go. So that's my blush colour. So in that case, I think I'm just going to go for the basic carmine. Right, let's mix this up.
Cosmetic companies were full of silly tricks like this. The book even suggests buying a different blush for different occasions. This genius upselling meant you might walk out of the shop with not one blush, but 2 or 3.
There we go. That's a cute colour. I look like I've been out for a walk. Made everything just sparkle.
Yeah.
That's why we love blush and the power of makeup. Gorge.
It's time to give Queenie some colour, and now I have the luxury of choice.
I brought a few concoctions that I made, and I also have some liquid suntan. This was really popular, and it actually looks quite amazing on. However, I'm not really going for that look with you. We are doing the Theda Bara look, so it is all about the dark eyes and the blush quite high up. So I think I'm going to mix together 3 of these. I'm going to mix together the Carmesin base, the Rose Bengal basis and the Carmine basis. I'm going to mix those 3 and create what I think will be a really good shade to emphasise the smoky eyes. Oh, this is heavenly. I love this because it really makes the eye makeup pop. You have that wonderful contrast between the hot pink and the dark eyes. And it was very authentic to have this kind of high, flushed look. Oh, this looks divine.
The late 20s and 30s saw the birth of many of the makeup brands which are still around today, like Max Factor, Boots No. 7 and Elizabeth Arden. As they competed with each other to sell more products, the marketing and packaging became increasingly sophisticated.
This is really a time when we're seeing such beautifully crafted items. The quality and the design is so beautiful by this point. They really are objects of desire. And if you think, before this period, something as well made as this, for example, would have only been available to the very, very wealthy. And the fact that an average woman can go and buy a compact as beautiful as this just shows you how far the industry has come.
As the cosmetic industry grew up, makeup became imbued with a sense of luxury and even mystique. It had to appeal to the 20th century woman, and nothing said modernity like science and technology. It's no accident that beauty spas like this one have an almost clinical feel. And this white lab coat culture started in the 1920s. One of its pioneers was Helena Rubinstein, an entrepreneur from Poland who claimed to have a medical degree.
When Helena Rubinstein moved to Australia, she launched her first cream, Creme Valais, and sold it as a miracle cream that contained herbs from the Carpathian Mountains. In fact, it was a mixture of waxes, lanolin, which was freely available there, and some pine bark essence. When her business partner suggested that they could sell it for $1 a pot, Helena allegedly balked and said, "Don't be silly, women won't buy anything that cheap. When it comes to their looks, they want something which is reassuringly expensive. We're going to sell it for 7 shillings and 7 pence. Helena was a marketing genius who really understood the power of the white lab coat, even to go as far as inventing a fictitious doctor who she claimed had helped her develop the product.
It worked. Valais sold like hotcakes. Other beauty products were truly scientific, even if they should have come with a health warning. Radium was first discovered by Marie and Pierre Curie in 1898 and was soon used in cancer treatments, in luminous paints, and many cosmetic products. It was seen as a magic bullet that could stop aging, improve complexions, and even whiten teeth. The never-mentioned potential side effect was radiation poisoning. Author and collector Lucy Jane Santos has looked into this interwar craze.
So radium was touted as a bit of a cure-all Do you think that's what attracted the beauty industry to it?
Well, the first thing to say is that radium in beauty products was linked to a school of thought called mild radium therapy, which is linked to this other idea that a little bit of what's noxious is actually going to stimulate your metabolism. It starts a chain reaction that's going to improve blood circulation, tissue regeneration, and it's just going to do your immune system good. So the idea with the radium is that if they put a little bit of radioactivity in these products, it's going to make you more beautiful.
So this really is the white coat brigade, isn't it? Which beauty's always loved, you know, since the days of Helena Rubinstein. It's always about in the white coat, in the lab, explaining the science behind these wonderful products.
And of course, if you're using a product such as radium that comes from a Nobel Prize-winning lab, you can really emphasise the benefit of it. Exactly.
I love the ad as well. I mean, she's glowing.
Yes.
And I think that they communicated that it would give you kind of the ultimate glow, would be very attractive.
Absolutely. This is a company, Tho Radio, which actually launches in Paris in 1933. And you can see from this poster here that you've got Dr. Alfred Curie. So here the company is being very clever with its marketing by using somebody's name to make people think of Marie Curie, who first discovered radium. So the links here are very clever.
There's no hard evidence that anyone died of radiation from using these products. Do you think it was just a very small marketing level of the ingredient?
I think it probably was. And at the time, makeup is not regulated, so there's nobody really paying attention to what's happening. The people who are bothered at this point want you to put more radium in the products. You get the American Medical Association and the British Medical Association who are concerned that they're not putting enough radium in their products to satisfy the claims that they're making. So again, there's a push to put more in, not less, and nobody is worried about the consequences.
I just love the packaging as well. I think that's what drew me first to this brand, was just the aesthetic. It's so chic. I do own some of these powders, but I've never seen a lipstick before, so I'm very jealous, and I have to have a look at this. Is that okay?
Absolutely.
Really quality pack. Oh, great shade. Dark red, absolutely typical of this period. Yeah, I must admit, if this was mine, I'd be wanting to actually try it. But I won't.
The marketing is working on me, but I'll restrain myself. Luckily, Sue is on hand to make a safer lipstick to try out on Queenie.
Okay, so Lisa, we've got carmine, which is a pigment.
Yep.
And then we have carmazine, which is a dye.
Yep.
And the base actually has liquid paraffin oil, soft white paraffin, and we're going to set it with hard paraffin wax.
It's a good colour, isn't it, the carmine?
It is a good colour.
So in the spirit of our homespun lipstick production here, I'm going to follow this recipe of how to make the mould. So it suggests tin foil and a stout pencil. We didn't have a stout pencil, but thank you for the glass pipette.
You're welcome.
And to roll it. It's my Blue Peter moment and I don't want to mess it up. Okay, so it suggests using soap to attach it, but I'm going to use some sellotape. And it says to set it in sand, so we have some laboratory sand. Voila!
So I'm just going to check whether everything's properly melted, and then we're going to start pouring.
Exciting.
It looks like it is.
Let the magic commence.
Indeed. It's very smooth. And I think we'll stop there. And I think that's it.
Great.
So all we have to do now
Is wait.
is wait.
Painting lips wasn't new to the interwar years. Pigments had been rubbed into lips since at least the ancient Egyptians. But what was new was the delivery system, a tube of colour that you could apply to your lips directly whenever and wherever you wanted.
Forgot how much tin foil I put on it. Shiny.
Wow.
That's glossy. It almost looks like lacquer. I'm going to put one glove on.
Good idea.
So that I can pick it up, hopefully, and not dye my hands, but I'm going to try it on this hand. I feel like we're quite heavy on the waxes, so it takes a little bit of building up, but colour's amazing.
Oh yes, the colour's beautiful.
But I do want to try one on my lips. But before I do that, because it's not just certain colours that are fashion in the 20s, it's all about the shape of your lips. There's a real trend for certain shapes, depending on which movie star you want to be.
Ooh.
So I'm probably going to go for a Clara Bow lip, or quite a small mouth. Because it's quite hard to create the shape, these were very popular, which are lip stencils. These ones were created by Ern Westmore, who was a very big makeup artist in Hollywood. And these are genius. If you look inside here, they are so good. It's all the different fashionable lip shapes. Look at that one. I'm not going to use these originals because these are very, very precious. But I've made a modern version.
Looks good.
So, I'm going to hold the stencil in place. Won't be able to speak once this is on. Not too bad. I mean, kind of accurate for the period. I know you're giving me that funny look, so honestly, trust me.
Okay.
This was a fashionable shape. It's a little bit messy around the edges. So my perfectionist makeup artist self, I've got to make this better. So I'm going to go back in, fix those edges a little bit. Yeah, it's pretty good.
It's very good.
Yeah. I can see why they were popular. Yeah, I feel very Clara Bow.
Clara was the quintessential flapper, a jazz age icon and the first American it girl, back when it was defined as being in possession of magnetic sex appeal and a carefree, natural confidence. She was the epitome of chic modernity. Her cute bob, expressive eyes, and of course that Cupid's bow mouth, could also be easily copied and worn with confidence by anyone.
So for Lips Queenie, we're going to do quite a small Clara Bow mouth. So I'm going to manipulate your natural lip shape to look much smaller than it is, which probably feels quite counterintuitive, taking into consideration modern day trends, which is all about as big a pout as possible. We're going to go the opposite and make a very small rosebuddy lip. So I'm going to start by using concealer. And I've already put some on, as you can see, just to take the edge off your lower lip. Just smile and pop and open slightly.
By the mid-1930s, lipstick wasn't the daring statement it had once been. You no longer had to go to Selfridges to buy makeup. It was available on every high street. A popular option was the chemist Boots, who had started selling colour cosmetics designed to appeal to every woman via a campaign of brightly coloured adverts and modern-looking products. I've come to their HQ to meet archivist Sophie Clapp.
Sophie, this is really calling my name. This is number 7, which is a bit of a game changer. This is really democratising beauty.
Yeah, and this was launched in the mid-1930s and really positioned as a brand for all women. And in those days, quite often brands would use famous faces, celebrities, to endorse their brands. But we chose an unknown model to represent the ordinary woman. And it was less about looking like the famous idol that you were trying to replicate. It was much more about bringing your own loveliness to light.
I love this one, actually.
Yeah, this is quite something. So this was helping those who might be still feeling a bit nervous about using colour on their face.
Particularly that colour on your cheeks. You would be nervous.
You would be nervous. And I love this line here, only you should know the rouge is there. So it is all about
amazing.
Presenting a natural look.
I think what strikes me here, Sophie, is that It is quite a slow progression into colour, and I think that really makes sense because you wouldn't want to frighten the kind of regular consumer on the high street.
Because there was so much nervousness around wearing, it was a real... Exactly, it was social condemnation, you know, if you wore something too outrageous.
Presumably, if you made a makeup faux pas in Surbiton in 1935, when your cheeks were too bright, you'd be the talk of the neighbourhood.
Absolutely, we couldn't have that.
By the late 30s, the beauty industry, and many of the cosmetic brands that we still know today, had become an integral part of life for the vast majority of women. Where once it was expensive, and at times almost forbidden, now makeup was available everywhere, and wearing it was almost an expectation.
This is just a really lovely snapshot of where the industry is by the end of the 1930s. It's a survey by mass observation, and this is the content of a young working-class girl's handbag. And she says that she carries around with her daily a nail file, powder compact, powder puff, lipstick, vanishing cream, eyebrow pencil, eyebrow tweezers, mirror, comb, hairpins, and nail polish. And the best bit is at the end where she says, "You see, only the bare necessities. I should be lost without my handbag. I shouldn't be able to take a step." I know the feeling, and it's just so fascinating to see that in just such a short period of time, it's really only 2 decades since you've either been scrambling around to find a lipstick, and now we have women walking around with the equivalent of a whole makeup shop in their handbags.
It's time to put the finishing touches on Queenie's makeup. I couldn't persuade her to cut her hair, so we've done a Marcel wave.
So that's a full face of cosmetics, and I love it.
As Queenie's look has come to life, it's been fascinating to see how shocking this brightly painted face must have seemed after the natural look of just a few years earlier. The incredible daring of the smoky-eyed vamp could be tricky to get right.
This is really not an easy brow pencil to use. The payoff is not very good.
And our lab-made foundation was a disaster.
Oh, it's piling. Uh-oh. Yikes. I'm afraid that's been a fail, so...
But the blush and the lipsticks were a huge success, and that shock of red truly illustrates how women's place in society was changing.
That is your vampy look. What do you think?
I really like it.
Could you see yourself going to a party in this look?
Definitely with the eye, yeah.
I think you look amazing.
Thank you.
And finally, we're done. I've turned Queenie from this to this. In Britain, wearing makeup had at times been the preserve of the rich, a sign of loose morality, or, if worn at all, something to be hidden. In the 1920s and 1930s, all that changed, forever. By the Second World War, women were told that beauty was their duty. Putting your red lipstick on was no longer seen as a daring or rebellious act, but your duty as a woman to lift morale and help the war effort. Both the joy and the tyranny that makeup brings were here to stay.